Hello, readers. I'm Eric Cimino, the author of the recent article in New York Archives magazine called The 1918 Spanish Flu in New York City. I'm a professor of history at Malloy University in Rockville Center, New York. I first became interested in the 1918 influenza pandemic when we were experiencing our own pandemic in 2020. I wanted to understand what happened over 100 years earlier during the last pandemic that was similar to COVID in its scope. I live in Queens, New York, and as ambulances were racing down my street on their way to Elmhurst Hospital, I was holed up in my apartment reading about the flu, and I haven't stopped reading about it since. One thing I was curious about, due to the dramatic scenes we were seeing in hospitals in 2020, was how hospitals coped in 1918. I began reading old annual reports from well-known hospitals like Bellevue and Presbyterian that were available online. One hospital that I had never heard of also kept popping up. It was called the Willard Parker Hospital for Contagious Diseases. However, little in the way of primary sources on this institution seemed to be available online, so I had to go to the archives to learn more. In Brooklyn, the municipal archives had the hospital's original patient register book, and I was eager to see what was inside of it. So made an appointment, and when I showed up, the book was waiting for me. It was the largest book I've ever seen, and it took everything the archivist had to lift it off its cart and heave it onto the reading table. Its contents did not disappoint, and these detailed records on every person admitted to Willard Parker became the basis of my article. I spent days going through the entries for the months of September, October, and November 1918. I discovered that while Willard Parker Hospital certainly saw a significant increase in patients, the hospital was not overwhelmed, and doctors and nurses had a good track record of keeping people alive, which is not the image we typically have of hospitals during pandemics, whether in 1918 or 2020. The second archive I visited was at the New York Academy of Medicine in Manhattan. It held the meeting minutes of Willard Parker's medical board. From the minutes, I learned that citizens took the time to write to New York's Department of Health with their own ideas for how to cure and treat influenza. Instead of dismissing outright these amateur concoctions, the health commissioner took them seriously enough to send them to Willard Parker's medical board for review. The board rejected most of the proposed cures, but one did stand out as having potential, a toxic substance which I describe in the article, and it was approved for testing on flu patients. This suggests to me that ordinary people want to feel useful during a public health emergency, as well as to feel like they have some control over these terrifying events, and officials should take care to not dismiss their efforts out of hand. I hope I've got you interested in the contents of my article. And while you read about the 1918 influenza pandemic, I encourage you to also reflect on your own experience of the COVID-19 pandemic and how your town or city responded to it. And thank you so much for reading.
The views and opinions of speakers expressed herein do not necessarily state or reflect those of the New York State Archives Partnership Trust, the New York State Archives, or the New York State Education Department.